Welcome to Korea Economic Broadcasting's global.Signs. I'm Bruce Han. From the campus of Delaware State University in Dover, Delaware, Dr. 찰리딘윌슨, the Associate Dean for Academics in the College of Agriculture, Science, and Technology, will share his insights on culture, science, economy, and education. Dean, thank you so much for joining us today.
I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me, Bruce.
Thank you. Can you tell our viewers about your role at Delaware State University?
Well, currently, I am the Associate Provost for Academics in the College of Agriculture, Science, and Technology. I've been at the university for 25 years now. I've been a professor, chair of the department, dean of the Science College before we merged with agriculture. And I'm involved in many activities from sports to advisement and just making sure our students get the most out of their university experience.
You recently wrote your autobiography entitled During Racism's Remission, From Colored Field Worker to Black Professor. Why should someone in Korea specifically think your story is important and valuable?
Well, I feel the book gives a rare glimpse into an African-American life that you don't see in the movies or on TV. And I grew up in rural poverty, did well in school, went to college, the military, and then back to graduate school, and then academia. So it's a very interesting story that I think people from all countries can relate to. I think that globally, people are much more the same than different. And I think the global community is shrinking every year, and becoming more interconnected. So lessons learned by any one of us, any of our stories, can have wide applications and lessons shared around the world.
Now, Dean, as an agricultural science expert, what do you think about the current grain inflation?
Well, I'm hardly an expert in agricultural science, but I do pay attention to what's going on. And, on a basic level, there's always a cyclic nature in agricultural prices for wheat, corn, and other products based on weather or availability. But currently, the war in Ukraine hasn't helped things out at all. Russia and Ukraine are large producers of wheat, for example, around 30% of global production. And even fertilizer prices are up, and Russia's a big producer of fertilizer. Rising fuel prices for producing, processing, and transporting crops also add to the rising prices. Supply chain disruptions and other issues from the pandemic, employment challenges, and other factors contribute as well.
Now, Dean, can the development of agricultural science and technology solve this inflation?
Perhaps it can be a long-term solution. It's difficult for science and technology to be quick and agile enough to respond to immediate crises. Food shortages or food insecurity is currently being addressed in several technological ways. They use tech to reduce food waste and recycle or repurpose food materials that otherwise would be considered waste. We can use spent grains, for example, from breweries to be used as protein or flour. We also can use plant-based and cellular-produced proteins to offset increased meat prices. Lab-grown or cultured meat can be used for a variety of purposes to provide protein. And lastly, AI and a digital global network can be used for more efficient processing, storage, and distribution of food. We can reduce waste, improve safety, and just improve the availability and safety, security of food around the world.
Currently, some governments are optimistic that COVID-19 is becoming endemic and so preparing for the end of the pandemic. As a biologist, do you really think the pandemic is over?
No, it's not over, and it will continue to surge erratically in various places and around the globe. Human nature will cause us to relax too much too soon, and the virus will gain ground again. Think of it as like a tug of war. Just when we think we're close to winning, we relax and start celebrating, only to find that some of our hard-fought gains have been erased by the efforts of our opponent, the virus. But endemic, of course, means that the virus doesn't disappear, but it becomes a normal part of our lives, with the majority of us being immunized, either artificially through vaccines or naturally through having the disease. And so we may have the virus with us for a long time, even though we won't feel the worst effects of it. Maybe we'll have a booster shot every year or two, just like we do with the normal flu.
Dean, Bill Gates has warned that a more serious pandemic could be coming. As a biologist, do you see the potential for a more severe pandemic in the future?
Sadly, I do. I don't think it's unreasonable to think that a more transmissible or more deadly version of COVID or another virus that hasn't been seen yet could come up and affect our lifestyles. Viruses mutate at an alarming rate, and the majority of those mutations don't have any consequence. But every now and then, there's a small change in the genome of a virus that allows it to be less susceptible to vaccines and other interventions that we're developing, and make it easily transmissible. So I do think, unfortunately, that viruses and their effect on us will persist for quite a while.
Now, finally, Dean, what do you think are some of the more interesting sectors and stocks for 2022?
One thing about staying at home during the pandemic was we had a lot of people having increased communication needs, and companies like Verizon, large telecommunication company, with high yielding dividend yields in the stocks. That's a good, very attractive market stock as well. But my pet sector, Bruce, is electric vehicles. Not just the companies that make them, like Rivian Automotive or Lucid Group or Nikola, but also those ancillary products that go along with electric vehicles, like batteries. And I know some of the most productive battery makers are actually in Korea. We know that LG Chem, their subsidiary, LGenergiSolution, for instance, or SK Innovation, SamsungSDI, as the electric vehicle sector grows, so will the need and demand for the batteries grow. So those are always going to be attractive stock options because the demand will be here for a long time.
Dr. Dean Wilson of Delaware State University, thank you so much for being on our show today and sharing your insights on a very fascinating topic.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, Bruce.
Thank you very much. That does it for our show this week. Thank you so much for being with us. Until we meet next week, please be safe, healthy, and vigilant.